Canoe camping along the Black Canyon Water Trail in Nevada has been on our bucket list for a while. It wasn't until recently that we had the chance to embark on this adventure, and it's all because of our buddy Phil. With his help, we put together a group of 12 to conquer the Black Canyon Water Trail and make lasting memories. There's a ton of research and planning that goes into this adventure, and over the course of this video, we're going to try to answer all of your questions. And for more detailed information, you can head over to our website, livethatadventure.com. If you are looking to do this, there are 3 different routes that you can take. If you own your own watercraft and you are an absolute beast, you can paddle all the way from El Dorado Canyon. Just know that this is 30 miles each way if you're going all the way to Hoover Dam. Option number 2, you can bring your own paddlecraft or rent some and paddle from Willow Beach up to the Hoover Dam and back. This is also where you will be catching your tours to take you to the famous Emerald Cave. And option number 3 is going through an approved outfitter and paddling from Hoover Dam down to Willow Beach. You can do this as a day trip or you can camp overnight. Paddling from the Hoover Dam to Willow Beach is 12 miles, but since we're splitting it up over 2 days, it's not all that bad. What was bad, however, was the weather. It was raining pretty heavily at times on our drive towards Vegas, and we were a little bit concerned that we weren't going to be able to even do it. But luckily, when we woke up dark and early the next day, the skies had cleared up and it was time to meet up with Venture Out Vegas. We ended up meeting up with Blair and his team at the NPS slot, which is on the far edge of the parking lot for the Hoover Dam Casino. I think that a huge determining factor of how much fun you have out here is the crew that you bring with you. And we were coming out here with 12 adventure seekers and 1 adventure pup. Almost as soon as we had the cars unloaded, we saw the vans from Venture Out Vegas roll up. You can also rent kayaks from them, but we all ended up renting canoes just because of all the storage for our camping gear. And we had a lot of it. Since we will be launching from inside the Hoover Dam facility, security is very tight. You need to bring your ID with you, and we had to show it to the ranger before we could even get into the shuttle. Luckily, V is very organized.
What's your name? V. You guys are lucky V's out there with you and not me.
One thing that is really important is to move your car back over by the Tesla superchargers after you've loaded the trailer, because unfortunately car break-ins do tend to happen over by the NPS slot. From there, it is just a 10-minute drive over to the Hoover Dam. Along the way, Blair shared some words of wisdom and also told us some really cool spots that he thinks we need to check out. One of them, in fact, he said he likes even more than the Emerald Cave, and we'll be seeing that one in just a little bit. We are now at the launch ramp, and things are going to start to get a little bit crazy. Due to the fact that we are launching inside the Hoover Dam facility, there is a rule that you can only be parked there for 15 minutes. This is a very strict time limit, so much so that the guy that was checking our licenses earlier was standing on the shore watching the clock. It's a good thing that our group was extremely efficient.
We got canoes. We're canoodling.
The walkway to the water's edge can get a little bit tricky because there are a couple of switchbacks. While that may not be too difficult if you are on foot or carrying gear, it is a little bit tricky when you're carrying a 14-foot long canoe. One of the big tricks that Blair gave us to get out on the water as fast as possible is to load all of the gear in the canoes and not worry about who it belongs to. There is a beach that is just about half a mile downstream, and you can pull over and take as much time as you want to repack there. In fact, Blair calls it Repack Beach. This beach is also home to Sauna Cave, and we wanted to stop there anyways. With time to spare, we pushed off and bid our new friend Blair farewell. It was time to get started, and everyone was definitely pumped. Even though V and I have a ton of experience in kayaks, this was our first time in a 2-person canoe. This can be a little bit tricky because the person sitting in the back is not only responsible for keeping pace with the person in the front, but steering as well. We were only about 200 yards downstream when we caught a stowaway on board, but he slipped away before we could catch him. We were still working on our paddling technique when we reached Repack Beach and the sauna cave. If you want to visit the sauna cave, it can be just a little bit tricky to find. You'll need to head down to the far end of the beach and look for a small gap between the trees. Footwear choice is very important here because not only will you be scrambling up this hillside, but there is a tricky little climb to get into the sauna cave. As with most hot spring waterfalls, this climb up was covered in a slimy, slippery green moss. Luckily there was a rope to help us get in there because otherwise it would have been pretty tough. The second you set foot in the sauna cave, you will understand where it gets its name from. It is incredibly humid inside. The hardest part of filming inside was keeping the camera lens from fogging up because the humidity seriously made Florida look dry. We didn't even make it all the way to the back of the cave because it gets really dark and very hot. And besides, the view out from the cave is one of the most spectacular features. After just a short amount of time in the cave, we carefully made our way back down the waterfall so we can continue on our way. It's time to say farewell to the Michael O'Callaghan Pat Tillman Memorial Bridge because it's going to be fading from view fairly quickly. The next point of interest is something that you may have seen on this channel in the past, and it is Gold Strike Hot Springs. Here's what the entrance to the canyon looks like, and even though we absolutely love Gold Strike, we weren't going to be stopping there on this trip. However, here are a couple of clips from the hot springs just in case you want to visit on your run down the river. I will say that accessing it from the canoes is so much easier. All you have to do is walk maybe 5 minutes up canyon and you will be at the hot springs. Here you will find waterfalls, a couple large pools, and also a couple smaller pools if you want a bit more of a personal hot tub. If you are near the head spring, the water can be about 109 degrees here, so keep it in mind because that's pretty toasty. If you are not doing the canoe trip and you want to get to Gold Strike on foot, you better be ready for an adventure. This hike requires a ton of climbing, down climbing, scrambling, and squeezing through tight areas. While we find these kinds of adventures very fun, it can be a lot for some people, especially after you've soaked in a hot spring for a long time. On the bright side, along the way there is this upper pool that you can check out too. After passing by Gold Strike Hot Springs, we continued on towards our next destination, which is Boy Scout Canyon. If you're wondering when the best time of year to do this trip is, we have you covered. Late fall and early spring are typically considered the best times of year, so October, November, March, and April. With daytime temperatures ranging between 65 and 85 degrees, it's perfect for paddling and hiking to the hot springs. Another bonus is that there are fewer motorboats and less crowds. Summertime, which is between May and September, is not recommended for most paddlers because it is extremely hot. Temperatures can be 110 degrees, and if you're going to be paddling, you better start really early. While the 50-degree water may seem like it would be refreshing on a hot day like that, it's not really good for you to go between boiling temperatures and chilly water. Lastly, we have winter, which is between December and February. This is a good option for people who like solitude. At that time of year, the air temperatures can be between 40 and 60 degrees, so you'll want to wear some layers, but the hot springs will feel really nice. Unfortunately, you will have to get out of them at some point, so you'll need a way to warm back up. Before we got to Boy Scout Canyon, we passed by this really interesting looking cave. Spots like this make us want to come back and do a 3 or 4 day trip just so we can stop and see all the unique spots along the river. Here we are arriving at Boy Scout Canyon, which you may have seen in our last video. Since we showed it in depth in our previous video, we are just going to show some of the highlights along the way. But let me tell you, if you thought Gold Strike was tough to get to, this one takes the cake. Every time you stop at a spot that you are going to explore in depth, you need to bring the canoes way up on the shore because the water from the dam does fluctuate, and the last thing that you want is to come back from a nice hike and see that your canoe is now downstream. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Boy Scout Canyon is tough. All of this water is from the hot springs, so once again you have that slippery moss on all of the rocks. While it is pretty to look at, it definitely makes some of these climbs a little bit trickier. I will say that I probably would not even attempt this canyon if you aren't with people who are skilled in both rock climbing and ropes. Luckily, we had just that in our group, and our buddy Phil was typically climbing up the rocks before us and running a rope down so he could belay us from the top. Not only do you need technique, but I think you need solid gear as well. Grippy shoes, a climbing harness, some rope, and a rappelling device will set you up for success. If you don't have all of the gear, you can always hike up to the first pool and then head back, but we were hoping to get all the way up to the amphitheater. And that is this spot right here. This is a popular canyoneering route, and that wall in front of you is a 330-foot rappel. We will not be doing that rappel this time, but we will be doing some of these smaller ones. We had heard a lot about the wonders of Boy Scout Canyon, and I will say that it definitely lived up to the hype. While we may not have been able to stop by our favorite Gold Strike Canyon, this was definitely worth it. We are now continuing on towards Arizona Hot Springs, and this is where we will be setting up camp for the night. Arizona Hot Springs is just under 2 miles downriver from Boy Scout Canyon. But even though it is downriver, you're still going to have to put in the work. The river here flows extremely slowly, so it's not going to help push you along. But before we got to Arizona Hot Springs, we got to the spot that Blair said he likes more than Emerald Cave, and it's this narrow opening that you see right in front of us. While Emerald Cave is really fun for big group shots, and you'll get to see it when we do our next video of day 2, this one is only wide enough for one canoe at a time. And it was going to put my new canoeing skills to the test because I had to back us in. Here you can see that this cave gives you that same gorgeous emerald green water when the sunlight hits it just right. I'm so glad that Blair told us about this spot because it would be really easy to miss if we weren't paying attention. If you would like the coordinates for this cave, we will have it up on livethatadventure.com. V and I spent a bit of time in the cave, and by the time we came out, the rest of our group had already made it to the beach for Arizona Hot Springs. We must have been visiting on a somewhat popular weekend because there was another large group right next to us, but there was still plenty of room to spare. As usual, we pulled our canoes way up on the shore. As for those red canoes that you saw down on the water's edge, by the time morning rolled around, those things were almost swept downstream. Not only did our campsite have more than enough space for 12 people, but it also had other amenities like restrooms. I will say, however, at the time of our visit, the restrooms could use a good emptying out and cleaning, and it was a little bit stinky in there. We also had picturesque views above our campsite like this one. And we even had our own personal cold plunge tank. The good weather had held out for most of the day, but it was about to take a turn.
Small rain delay, eating food in the tent, noodles in the tent. Not sponsored, but hopefully it will pass and we can go to the hot springs.
The hot spring gods did end up smiling upon us. The rain ended up taking a break just long enough to take some people to Arizona Hot Springs that had never been there before. As always, there is a ton of slippery moss on the rocks along the way. This is probably one of the easiest hot springs to get to from the Colorado River, but you don't want to get caught off guard and slip on the rocks. In recent years, they have added this really nice staircase to get you up to Arizona Hot Springs. It used to be a sketchy ladder. At the time of our visit, we didn't know that this hot spring had recently flash flooded, and the first spring, which is the warmest, was completely full of gravel. Since it was pretty difficult to film at the springs in the dark, here's what Arizona Hot Springs looks like in the daytime. If you are making your way up from the river, just know that the hot springs get hotter and hotter as you go up, with the top spring that you can see right here being right around 111 degrees. We spent a little bit of time at the hot springs before heading back to camp. At this point, we have paddled 4 out of 12 miles, so we had a pretty full day ahead of us. Since this was our first time doing this, we didn't really know how much to pack. We didn't end up bringing any of our shower bags or anything like that. So to rinse off the hot spring water, we took one more cold plunge, and I must say that our friend Noemi has a pretty good tolerance for cold water. Luckily, by the time we got out of the cold water, our good friend and world-renowned chef Raymond had not only sparked up the campfire, but the grill as well. This was the perfect way to end a very eventful day. And if you stay tuned till next week, you'll see that things got even a little bit crazier that night. But that is going to do it for our first video about canoeing in Black Canyon. Stay tuned for next week's video when we continue on towards Emerald Cave. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because it really helps out the channel. If you have ideas for future videos, let us know. And for all the information about canoeing with Venture Out Vegas and other awesome Nevada adventures, head on over to livethatadventure.com.